I am so glad that I dug deeper into this canyon. For one, it's just beautiful, but two, I would not have given this WRX the credit it deserves.
Hey crew, I've got the key to that 23 Subaru WRX GT. We are going to take it for a drive, but first, let's check out how it looks on the inside and outside. The latest generation WRX was introduced last model year, so it carries over pretty much unchanged for 23. Up front, we'll find the classic hood scoop. Wouldn't be a WRX without it. Beneath that is a more conservative grille with a gray painted stripe across. This one has projector LED headlights on the GT with incandescent turn signals. Beneath we find fog lights on the GT and lots of black plastic cladding. Get used to that. We're going to see a lot of it on this car. This one is painted in ignition red. And while not a red car guy necessarily, it does look good here, but not as good as World Rally Blue. At the side, what do you know? More plastic cladding all around the wheel arches. There are some functional vents behind those. This one rides on 18-inch dark gray painted wheels, wrapped in Dunlop Sport Max GT summer tires, 245 section front and rear. Between those wheels, we find more cladding. Body color matching door mirror caps, black window trim. Stepping back to look at the profile, the latest WRX is 3 inches longer, a little bit shorter and a little wider than the predecessor. Has this more graduated sedan stance. You know, I think if this one was on BBS wheels with chunkier all-terrain tires, the cladding would work. At the back are LED taillights with this cool magma effect to them and incandescent turn signals. The GT gets a body color lip spoiler, and down low, my gosh, there's a diffuser in there and 4 chrome exhaust outlets, but it's buried in plastic cladding. I don't think any wheel and tire package is gonna save the rear end view of the new WRX for me. But what do you think of the rest of the aesthetic? My question for you, do you like this new look better or worse than the predecessor? Let me know in the comments, and let's check out the interior. Opening up and looking inside at this black leatherette interior, which on the GT gains red contrast stitching and suede seat inserts. On the doors, hard plastics up high. We've got fake carbon fiber trim, a little painted silver plastic there. Suede red stitching, leatherette, nice padding, and hard plastics down low. Harman Kardon 11 speaker sound system on the GT, 1 touch up down windows. Stepping in, behind my own seat at 6 feet tall, I've got plenty of knee room, and this is all in leatherette, nice map pocket. Decent foot pockets to slide your feet under, so thigh support is solid. Headroom is not. Head is pressed against the roof, can't make it back to that headrest, so it's gonna be a thumbs down situation from me. In the middle, no air vents. On a $44,000 car as tested, no rear air vents. You do get 2 USB-A ports here, and the drive shaft dump isn't so big that you couldn't make it into the middle seat easy enough, but then headroom, again, is the problem. If you don't have a middle passenger, then you can pull down this armrest for 2 cup holders and padding. Hope your rear passengers are smaller. Let's check out the front. Door close noise is surprisingly solid for a mainstream compact sedan. Smart keyless entry for the front 2 doors and the front seats. We're looking at Recaro sport buckets that you can only get on the GT trim. They got more support, they're heated, power adjusting on the driver's side, manual adjustments on the passenger side. You get your sunroof here. On the doors, we move to injection molding up top, otherwise the same as the back. 4 one-touch windows, power adjusting, not power folding door mirrors. And here is your trunk release. It doesn't pop all the way up, but it does it a fair amount. Inside, we find 13.1 cubic feet of space. And if you need to fold down the rear seats 60-40, you're gonna have to go to the back doors and release the latches. There's no handle to close the lid, so just rest your fingers here and very gently bring them down. 2 last things to point out before hopping in. You get aluminum pedals and red lettered WRX on the floor mats. Closing up this door and throwing it in accessory mode with 2 taps of the start stop button. That triggers on a very small TFT display in between an analog tach and speedo. You can reconfigure that with these up-down arrows here. There is no head-up display. A mixture of hard plastics and injection molding is up on the dash. Here we find suede with red stitching and leatherette beneath. and then an 11.6-inch touchscreen infotainment that is mostly responsive, and it does have wired, not wireless, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. As physical inputs go, you've got a volume and tuner knob, plus up-down temperature controls for both passengers. The rest of the climate stuff is all in the bottom portion of the screen. Further down, we've got an aux jack still, DC outlet, 2 USB-A ports, no wireless charging pad, and lots of gloss black around your very plasticky feeling gear selector. Don't love that. The steering wheel is leather wrapped and chunky in the hands with these paddles to operate your simulated shifts of the CVT transmission. Flat bottom here, more of that thick carbon fiber stuff. Then leatherette with contrast stitching, 2 large cup holders under this padded leatherette topper. We've got decent console storage with a DC outlet. Visibility is excellent, and there's standard blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic. This cabin has some real highlights, like the Recaro Sport Bucket seats, plus lots of leatherette and suede, and a user-friendly infotainment system. But where are the rear air vents? Okay, let's take the WRX GT for a drive. All right, let's fire it up. Little rumble from that boxer 4-cylinder, and those chimes, by the way, if you have your seatbelt off and you're just meandering around a parking lot, will get louder and incessant. So that's irritating. Hello, cabin camera crew. That's what I'm calling you when you're over there. The WRX has a few different drive modes that we can choose from. In the GT grade, you hit the car icon there, and then we select our drive mode. We've got 5 different options, including an individual where you can customize all these different settings. We're going to begin in comfort. And then we'll pull back on the gear selector. It's really a CVT, so it's a directional selector. And that brings up a kind of low resolution camera, and it's just on this portion of this vertical screen. It does have trajectory lines. I like that. It's down into drive, and we'll begin with a turning radius test. Cranked, and it's acceptable. 4 driven wheels, don't expect anything amazing. It works. Turn signal sound, innocuous. I'm fine with that. How about the horn sound? Ooh, sounds like a budget horn. They did not spring for the higher quality horn sound. The powertrain in all trims of the 23 WRX is a turbocharged 2.4-liter boxer or flat 4-cylinder that makes 271 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. Now that is routed through your choice of a 6-speed manual, that's the standard gearbox, or a CVT transmission. At least that's true for all trims except for the GT, where not only is the manual not standard, it's not even available. If you want the Recaro seats and the adaptive dampers and the other GT specific things, then you have to get a CVT. And while the CVT is effectively the automotive equivalent of bumpers in a bowling alley, right? Like a CVT is the A to B transmission for your car. No flourishes, just get you there. The bumpers in the bowling alley are like, we're gonna get your ball to the pins. Not gonna have any style, it's the beginner spec. This CVT though, I have to say, is the best one I've ever experienced because it genuinely simulates 8 different gears. And that's a claim that other automakers have made about their CVTs, that despite the fact that a CVT doesn't have gear ratios, theirs was going to mimic a torque converter automatic in the satisfaction of moving forward into your next gear as you accelerate, or downshifting when you were going to decelerate. But when rubber met the road, I've never felt that in a CVT, whereas this one, I do feel that. And so I don't hear, 1, the consistent drone of a CVT as you're accelerating, and 2,
when you get to that point where you're like, okay, it's been enough in the rev range, we need to move on to the next gear, you actually feel that. And so I don't mind this as much as I do a normal CVT, but I would prefer to have the option of the 6-speed manual that I've driven in the 22 WRX, which was good. It was not an amazing transmission. I felt like the throws were a bit long and the pedal travel was long as well, but it was good to have that level of engagement, and it was certainly better than something like the new GTI or Golf R's manual gearbox. Having the choice would be nice. In the GT, we do have adaptive dampers, and so here in the comfort mode, ride quality is quite good. Yes, you still have the tautness of a sports sedan, but the dampening is excellent, so you're not disturbed riding over bumps. That is something I wish you could get in other trims of the WRX, but it's locked into the GT. And these Recaro buckets are a tad on the firm side, just a tad, but they do support you well, and I'm sure they're going to prove very useful for keeping me in place when we get to some cornering stuff a little later. Higher speeds, listening for the NVH level, we do hear some drone from the exhaust with constant throttle, but importantly, it's drone from the exhaust, it's not drone from the CVT. And other sounds include some wind, but more tire noise, though both are at levels that are no more egregious than any of the competitors like the Civic Si or the Hyundai Elantra N. And with features like adaptive cruise control and steering assist, the WRX is a very commutable sedan, and the GT version being the most commuter-friendly with these adaptive dampers. In the comfort setting, throttle response is measured. It's not dead, not too touchy, certainly. And when you switch to sport, let's do that now. It perks up quite a lot, and then the braking is very easy to regulate. You can feather that pedal and just come up to the smoothest stop. The daily drivability of the WRX is absolutely here, but what about the weekend funability? That's gonna be a made-up word for today. Not the word of the day, just the word I'm making up today. Let's find out how the WRX GT does on a good canyon road. Now, before the fun can begin, we need to change up our drive settings, because Sport is good, but not good enough. We're gonna go to Sport Plus, which puts everything in the most extreme setting, including the climate control. Oh darn, it's just normal. What would a sport climate look like? Just maximum air all the time? I'm not sure. It's a weird thing to ask, Miles. All right, let's drive this thing. And this is the only dirt, I'm sorry to say, that we're gonna see today, but I will talk about later why I wish there was more. The most noticeable immediate difference between Sport or Comfort and Sport Plus is how much these adaptive dampers have firmed up to transfer as much of the road surface as possible through the chassis to your body, providing that communication and reducing what is a little bit of lean in the corners. You got that extra ride height of the WRX compared to some of its sport compact rivals, and so that higher center of gravity wants to lean more, but the adaptive dampers do a good job of curtailing that. And I'm thankful for all of the transmission of the road texture, because I'm getting very little of that through this steering. The rack is quick and the steering is light, and I mean, I appreciate them resisting the urge to just overly weight the rack, as some automakers, wow, that bug died dramatically, as some automakers do. If they're not going to give you feedback, they'll just make the rack really heavy. They didn't do that, but we don't get weight or feedback. I'm not getting the granularity of the road surface that describes the car's dynamics. And so instead, I'm having to rely on my eyes, and again, on this chassis to communicate that. Throttle response in Sport Plus is much sharper. So you can quickly exit a corner after not being on the throttle. The power feels sufficient. It's not going to overwhelm you. CVT's proving a little confused in some situations. Not quite sure what fake gear to offer me. It does seem to mitigate the lag that can happen with a single turbo engine as you're waiting for the boost to build down low in the RPM range. In Sport Plus, it doesn't really let you go that far down. So you're seemingly always on boost and always able to scurry. The brakes, still easy to modulate like we found around town. But as we experienced there, their tenacity is just okay. They don't necessarily feel up to snuff for the speeds this car can achieve in a straight line before you then need to tuck it in to the next curve. So the initial impression I'm getting on the WRX GT is not one of a razor sharp sports sedan, but it's more than anything playful and fun. It feels happy out here. Happy killing a ton of bugs. Now the time feels right to see how quick the WRX GT will get to 60. So I've got my race box set up here. There is no launch control. We just have it in Sport Plus still. I am going to hit this button to put us into the track version of traction control. I'll then brake boost it off the line, and we'll see how we do. And there's 60 in 6.17 seconds. Yeah, so it's not a rocket ship. It's not slow necessarily, but I think that if the CVT version at least had a launch control system that was better than me just brake boosting it up to around 2,000 RPM, then that would make sure we were on boost and we could optimize the all-wheel drive system to really put that power down and get a quicker run. To be fair, independent tests have seen as quick as the mid 5-second range to 60. Just not tear your face off acceleration. This is much more what you'll enjoy doing in the WRX. Whipping through corners, letting that torque vectoring all-wheel drive system work its magic to get the power to the tire with the grip, so you can get the grin. And should the road coil itself into a tighter serpentine, and should you be encouraged to use the manual mode, you can, and engage the paddles on the back of the wheel for prompt shifts. Here the WRX is really controlling its body well. It's also letting it go all the way out to red line. It tries to correct its own understeer and does a good job of that. If you want to help it, you can trail brake it just a touch to mitigate the plow and help the rear end come around. This is by far the most I have enjoyed this car so far. It responds so well to being hucked through corners. I just can't help but feel I would enjoy it even more if I was operating a manual gearbox, shifting my own gears genuinely. The CVT is doing fine. It's just not that level of engagement. I am so glad that I dug deeper into this canyon. For one, it's just beautiful, but two, I would not have given this WRX the credit it deserves. I wouldn't have seen these adaptive dampers putting on their best show to contain this body in corners. I wouldn't have felt the torque vectoring system optimized to the degree it is here. I surely would not have appreciated this package in total until I found a road like this where the WRX really comes alive. I stand by the fact that this car needs a little bit of help with the steering. It needs more feedback and some bitier brakes. And it belongs with the manual gearbox, because while this CVT is competent, it's not immersive. And that's something that a good manual can give you. It allows you to extract every last morsel of enjoyment out of a car like this. Still, I was gonna call the WRX just fun. But it's more than that. It is invigorating. Yeehaw! And that is going to lead me into my miles per hour word of the day, which is not invigorating, though that is applicable. It's actually ebullient, meaning cheerful and full of energy. That is the WRX. It is happy in the right environment, and that makes me happy. Now, before we hop into pricing and competition, let's talk top speed and fuel economy. The top speed for the WRX GT is 145 miles per hour, while the fuel economy is 19 mpg in the city, 25 on the highway, and 21 combined, which is actually 1 mpg lower than the manual equipped WRX. When does that happen these days? But just another reason to get the manual, okay? The starting figure is a shade under $32,000. If you want the GT, that's a hair. I'm just using all these different metaphors here. A hair under 43 grand, and this one, as tested, is a bit over 44,000. What would it be? An ounce, a dollop over $44,000. Now, the competitive discussion is not really an easy one, because you can approach it from so many different ways. You could say, hey, tell me about the other sporty, semi-affordable sedans, and I go, all right, let's talk about the Honda Civic Si. That's around $30,000. It makes 200 horsepower, gets to 60 in 6.8 seconds, and has fuel economy of 31 combined. Or you've got the Hyundai Elantra N. That starts at around $34,000. It makes 286 horsepower, gets to 60 in just 4.9 seconds, and its fuel economy of 23 combined. Both of those having manual transmission options. Or you could say to me, I'm not just interested in sedans. I would also consider hot hatchback, to which I would respond, what's your budget? Because if it's entry-level WRX money, then you'd look at the Volkswagen Golf GTI for around $32,000. You get 241 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 5.4 seconds, and fuel economy of, I can't remember, it's going to be in the spec. But if you had more money to spend, if you had, say, in the $40,000-ish range, then you have a whole field of hot hatch competitors, including the Golf R, you've got the Honda Civic Type R, you've got the Toyota GR Corolla. They all make around the same low 300-ish power. They all get to 60 around the mid to high 4-second range. And the WRX GT, I think, just can't compete with that caliber of performance machine. I think it would be amazing if you could take certain parts of the GT and piecemeal them into lower spec versions of the WRX. If you could take these adaptive dampers, if you could take the Recaro Sport Bucket seats and then put them on like a premium trim version of the WRX, that would be amazing. But even without that ability, I would still forego the CVT transmission and get the $34,000 WRX Premium with the same power, with still a good sport tune suspension, and with that 6-speed manual gearbox. I would daily drive it, maybe even on the weekends, hit up some canyons, and then I'd also get a set of all-terrain tires on some smaller wheels, and I would hit up some dirt roads also on the weekends. You buy the extra set of wheels and tires, you spend a few minutes on the weekends swapping them out, and you have two different flavors of a great performance product, because the thing I said earlier about me wanting to spend some time on the dirt, this car really has that built into its pedigree. And I know it'd be a super ton, that's how much. It would be a super ton. It would be a ton of fun in that environment. And that's something its competitors can't match. Because otherwise, I'm not spending $44,000, $45,000 on that. I'm gonna go get a Hyundai Elantra N, or maybe wait a year and get the facelifted version of that and be very, very happy with a street-specific, high-performance, very fun to drive car. Now I'm wondering, what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Would you have the WRX? Would you get it in a lesser spec manual version, or would you have the GT? Would you spend the money on a hot hatchback like one of the Golf Rs or the GR Corollas or Civic Type R? Would you get the GTI for a less expensive, less potent hot hatchback? Or would you have the Honda Civic Si for the lowest price point? Or would you have the Hyundai Elantra N? Let me know in the comments. I hope you guys have enjoyed this POV drive review. I certainly enjoyed filming it. If you did enjoy it, please like, comment, and share it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell to get notified. And I'll see you next time.